Behold, the most masculine and most interesting anime of the last 1,000 years. If you have already seen all the Gachimuchi content, and it seems to you that the world is fading without Billy, then this is exactly what will dilute your gray and boring life.
Let's go.
So, the first season begins with the fact that the unlucky old grandfather with a gorgeous mustache on his Chevy Horsepala crashed the fuck up. Nobody knows where the fuck did he want to go, maybe to take a newly made child into the forest with his wife in order to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This old prankster is the father of JoJo, later on our main character, but this old prankster could not even think that he would become a sweet prey for a PUBG fan. Who decided to loot a corpse out of noble motives to enrich poor people. But this homeless Robin Hood could not think that all this is a prank of an old scoundrel. However, after realizing that the old fart apparently has Alzheimer's, the homeless Robin Hood becomes the hero of the situation, and the surviving old fart promises to fulfill his every request. 12 years later, the offspring of the old fart has grown up and often wants to find out who is the boss of the gym in the village solely from gentlemanly motives, but forgets that he is just a jabroni and has not yet grown even to the title of a fucking slave. Moreover, we learn that the homeless Robin Hood also has an offspring who grew up, at first glance, an unsuccessful patient. Actually, before his death, his father says to them, "Dio, I fucked a couple of rich losers. They still owe me. Go to the Joestars." And Dio, having washed the tombstone of his beloved father to a shine, follows his instructions. Upon arrival, Dio, wasting no time, showed JoJo who is the real boss of the gym and who is jabroni, lowering him in the eyes of his friends, burning his dog for fun and making a major cuckold out of JoJo. JoJo didn't like being a cuckold, and he normally showed Dio his deep, dark fantasies. After some more time, the guys get in fucking shape and can stand in line with such mastodons as Ricardo Milos, and it even seems that they have become friends. But Dio doesn't think so and secretly poisons Dad with heroin, and his father doesn't seem to especially against it. But JoJo quietly stole a bag from the tray and went to London to find out what kind of huckster makes such terrible shit. At this time, Dio finds a strange BDSM mask and decides that latex glove is too little to be a real dungeon master, and eventually learns that this mask can turn you into a very strong vampire, and a real dungeon master is only happy about the prospect of sucking. At the same time, JoJo is shredding fuckers right and left in London so elegantly that he has a buddy named Speedwagon, who helps his family for the rest of the seasons and helps him find a huckster at the moment. JoJo learns that Dio has been poisoning their father all this time like some kind of jabroni and flies home with 2 legs, like in WWE, to save his own father. But Dio, saddened by this outcome, shows his father a backstab and spills his blood on the mask, and putting it on becomes a vampire by scattering the arriving constables.
That's power, son. That's power.
As a result, JoJo planted Dio on a pike, leaving him to burn in the house, remembering the good old 43rd year. Moreover, JoJo even reconciled with his lover, but even then some strange man with a mustache got to the bottom of them, who says that Dio is still alive and he needs to be kicked out completely, and he decides to immediately show JoJo his kung fu skills. Actually, JoJo successfully fucked up this fight and agreed to train. Short story, Zeppeli taught him how to use jammin'. They went and broke the fuckers of Dio's henchmen. Then, Tima named after Hammond slowly gathered and thrashed Dio with the crowd, but even here the cunning Jew figured out how to outwit everyone, leaving only his head. JoJo happily decides to go abroad on a cruise with his pregnant lover, but realizes that Dio has fucked them and finds this head in the vestibule. Well, during the brawl, JoJo died with Dio, blowing up the ship after saving his wife and child. After JoJo's death, his grandson Joeseph proves the Joestar family's famed prowess by beating up the cops and screwing around. Having met some black guy, JoJo makes friends with him, and having come to the restaurant to his granny, finds out that one of his grandfather's homies killed the Speedwagon and stole the mask. After promising his grandma to avenge the Speedwagon, JoJo sits calmly with his new friend in a cafe, but notices a guy who looks like a homosexual on the street and decides that he does not mind being. This guy turns out to be a vampire, Dad's psychic, who immediately decides to eat JoJo to quickly solve his problem. But JoJo apparently always carries a Thompson and a couple of grenades with him, so he safely rebuffs the persistent guy from the first date. Then it turns out that the Nazis rescued and brought the Speedwagon out of his coma to find out what ancient garbage they dug up. But the Speedwagon is in no hurry to cooperate.
Speedwagon.
Arriving in Mexico to save the Speedwagon, Joeseph comes up with an ingenious plan to infiltrate the Nazi base by disguising himself as a trans slut, and it surprisingly works. At this time, the Nazis still figured out how to awaken the vampire and enjoy contemplating the real dungeon masters. But it turns out that the dungeon master is not going to cooperate and calmly dumps into the ventilation along the way, sucking all life out of the Nazis in the doorways. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the pause I have sustained is necessary in order to introduce him to you with a little delay. Caesar. JoJo met Caesar in Rome, full of romance and stained with semen from black pentacles eaten in a restaurant. Obviously, our fucking slave disappointed by the fact that such a wonderful man flirts with a woman resembling jabroni, which eventually led to the present figuring out of who here boss of the gym. By the way, as a real heterosexual man, JoJo defeated him by filling a woman's kiss pigeon with his jammin'. Ironic. After clarifying the relationship with the dungeon masters and the Nazis, Caesar notices that one of his friends has been killed and in a fit of emotion gets slapped in the face by him for excessive heterosexuality. But JoJo's love and care does not slumber and he, pretending to run, saves them by getting an engagement ring.
It's so fucking deep.
The condition of this ring is that if JoJo can defeat each of the dungeon masters in a fight, they will recognize him as the boss of the gym and remove the ring from the heart. Seeing this, Caesar decides to help Joeseph and be together. After all these graders, JoJo went to Venice to meet with the great master of Jammin', who immediately throws them from the mountain like in Sparta and leaves them to get out on their own, smeared in semen. Obviously, after all these misadventures, Lisa decides to take a firm grip on our jabberness and train them properly, so she throws them into the dungeon, putting a Van mask on them so that they become dungeon masters. But very soon the real dungeon masters decide to break their calm, and at the moment when Joeseph gets out of the dungeon and almost considers himself cool, but immediately he is attacked. JoJo defeats one of the dungeon masters named ACDC, but then finds out that some precious and very important stone was stolen and now he needs to go to Switzerland to pick it up. Only in Switzerland he finds out that the Nazis already have the stone. The Nazis really do not want to give the stone, so JoJo decides to wait and come up with a plan, and his friend, Boy Next Door, behaves like a jabroni and decides to go himself to resolve the issue with the vampires. Driven by revenge, the lovers quarrel and Caesar escapes to take revenge on Vam, but dies as a result of an incredibly epic fight. It turned out ironically, but JoJo was tired of the wedding ring. But JoJo clearly wanted Caesar to put this ring on him, and having received the last thing left of Caesar, namely his bondage, Joeseph also decides to avenge the handsome man. Vam openly admits that Caesar was his strongest opponent and almost became a real dungeon master. But the Nazis came and ruined everything, hitting the vampire with the strongest beam of light while he had that most important stone on him, and as a result, this stone made him a higher being. That's it. Fuck it. It seems that the main character should cosplay George Floyd compared to the dungeon master, but it wasn't there, and JoJo comes up with a cunning plan to drown the dungeon master in lava, which he does. Joeseph later married Master Hammond's assistant and had a child. Can you guess what this kid's name will be?